Today is our traditional journey into the deep space. Let's go.
Okay, let's unpack this. When we talk about the logistics of interstellar travel, the mental images we usually conjure involve these vast metallic structures, maybe a flash of fusion, or perhaps the cold isolation of cryosleep.
We think of technology as the solution, hardware.
Exactly. We think of hardware. But today, we're diving into a proposal that just flips that blueprint entirely. This is the Barnard BIOS project, a deep dive into an engineered journey to Barnard's star, which is 5.9 light years away.
Not exactly next door.
Not at all. And this isn't just a ship, it's a civilization compressed into a vessel. It is a starship that has been intentionally designed to function, survive, and regenerate as a living, self-sustaining organism carrying 8 human beings across 34 years of deep space.
And the audacity of design is what initially captivates you, right?
Yeah.
But the feasibility, that's rooted in the detail of the source material we have. We're looking at a voyage that, in its initial calculations, just relying on conventional chemical ion drives, was projected at 56.4 years.
Over half a century.
Half a century. The challenge of sustaining human life, and frankly, morale for that long without any resupply is, well, it's practically insurmountable.
Yeah.
But the final, radically re-engineered hybrid design cuts that down to a much more manageable, there's still generations spanning 34 years.
Still a lifetime.
Still a lifetime. And the core intellectual leap here is that the entire mission is completely contingent upon the success of radical closed-loop biotechnology. We have to move beyond simply filtering air. We have to bioengineer every single component, from the food on the plate to the fuel in the engine.
Absolutely. And the level of specificity we have in these sources is, it's frankly staggering. We're going to go through the complete blueprint, from the custom engineered bacteria that recycle crew waste into structural fibers and high thrust propellant,
Wild stuff.
to the elaborate mandatory psychological harmony protocols, and finally the specific details of the target planet, Omega 2G. So our mission today is to understand exactly how a civilization plans for a journey that lasts a generation, treating the vessel itself as an organism. We're going to dissect the performance metrics, the chemical pathways, and even the social architecture that defines life on board this living starship.
Let's do it.
So let's start where any sustainable environment must start. Life support. This is BioZero, the beating heart of the starship. And this isn't just a life support system. It is, as the sources describe it, the foundational concept of the living starship.
It's the core engine of everything else.
It really is. And I'm fascinated by their simple engineering philosophy, which they distill into the 1 input 6 output model. Everything that enters the system, every single bit of human-generated mass, must be recycled in one of 6 usable resources.
And that principle is the non-negotiable requirement for any multi-decade vessel. Mass is destiny in spaceflight. And if you have to carry spare parts or food or oxygen for 34 years, the mass penalty just becomes insurmountable for any feasible launch system.
Can't even get off the ground.
You can't. Therefore, everything has to be zero waste. So let's look at those inputs. They're the unavoidable byproducts of human existence. Co-euro from breath, urine, and moisture. So water vapor,
Right.
feces, and crucially, waste heat.
Wait, I want to pause on waste heat. That's a fascinating detail.
Yeah.
Why is waste heat listed as a critical input alongside, biological waste?
It speaks directly to the bioengineering. The reactors, they operate optimally in very specific thermal ranges. Waste heat that, say, plus 5 degrees C differential from the ship's internal environment is captured, and it's channeled directly into maintaining the reaction kinetics of the bioreactor.
Oh, it makes them work better.
It improves their efficiency, yeah. It ensures the processes, things like hydrolysis and cell culture growth, proceed rapidly. It's thermal energy recycling, integrated seamlessly into the whole system.
So we feed the system human waste, heat, and LED light, specifically 680 nanometer photons, which I guess is the sweet spot for photosynthesis.
The optimal wavelength, exactly.
So what are the critical 6 outputs that sustain the crew?
They are O for breathing, HO, which is recycled and condensed for drinking and hydration, protein biomass, which is crucial at 40% protein content for food,
Okay.
structural fibers for engineering purposes, and finally growth support via recycled heat and light we just mentioned.
And this brings us to one of the most compelling strategic insights of the entire proposal, which addresses one of the most fundamental risks of deep space: radiation exposure leading to DNA damage. The source material makes this incredible claim here. No radiation biology repairs the DNA itself.
This is a radical philosophical statement. It suggests that they are not relying solely on passive, heavy metallic shielding.
Right, like lead walls.
Forget the lead walls. Instead, they've engineered the entire vessel's ecosystem, including the human diet and the rapid turnover of the onboard biology, to mitigate or even reverse genetic damage through superior cellular repair mechanisms. These are derived from the cyanobacteria and potentially supplemented by vitamins and compounds synthesized directly by the onboard microbes.
So the life on board
It's
is part of the radiation shield.
It is part of the radiation shield. Life is the shield.
Okay, so here's where we get into the molecular detail. The engine of this zero waste loop, the heart of BioZero, it's not just a passive plant farm. It's a highly optimized, precision engineered organism they call Cyanobacteria 2.0. This organism is the biological equivalent of a Swiss Army knife.
It has to be. I mean, to achieve the necessary efficiency in such a confined volume, they had to resort to extensive genetic modification using CRISPR technology.
Right.
And we really need to look at the specific edits because they solve three classic deep space problems all at once. First, oxygen output. They increase the PSBA promoter.
Okay, let's pause and translate the jargon for everyone listening. What exactly is a promoter in this context?
Right, good question. Think of the gene for oxygen generation as an engine. The promoter is essentially the volume control. It's the DNA sequence that tells the cell how frequently to express that gene.
So they turned up the volume.
By increasing the PSBA promoter, they didn't just make a better engine, they cranked the volume to maximum, achieving a phenomenal plus 300% euro output compared to naturally occurring cultures. This is why the reactor volume can be so incredibly small.
That immediately addresses the air supply. But what about nitrogen? That's essential for protein synthesis and, traditionally it requires complex handling of ammonia from urine.
They just bypass the ammonia problem entirely by enabling the NIF cluster. This cluster allows the cyanobacteria to perform atmospheric nitrogen fixation, meaning it can bind N-euro ambient nitrogen directly.
Wow.
This eliminates the need for complex chemical processing of urine to recover nitrogen and vastly simplifies the overall life support complexity.
And this leads to the third, and for me, the most compelling edit, which transforms the biology into an engineering material, the fibrogene introduction.
Correct. The introduction of the fibrogene causes the culture to secrete nanocellulose fibrils. The sources describe these as Kevlar-like.
Kevlar-like.
This is the true insight here. The wastewater purification process immediately yields the raw material for 3D printing. The strategic consequence of this is profound. The ship can launch with zero spare mass for structural components like gaskets, tubing, or minor fixtures. Any necessary part is literally grown from the waste stream.
That is the core strategic breakthrough right there. It removes the massive mass penalty of 34 years worth of spare parts. Now, let's look at the efficiency numbers because they are the proof that this radical design actually works. Standard terrestrial plants are, barely 3% photosynthetically efficient.
These customized bacteria hit 10% efficiency. Combined with a culture density of 10 grams of dry mass per liter, this allows for unbelievable miniaturization. Let's run the calculation for a single crew member, just to show the tiny physical footprint required.
Okay, so for one person over 24 hours, the ORO HERO needs are met with a reactor volume of just 5 liters. That's the size of a standard thermos pot.
A thermos, exactly.
It requires only 0.5 square meters of LED light, consuming a mere 25 watt.
And the output confirms the system's robustness. 1,200 grams of OEO per day, that's 133% coverage, and 2.7 liters of water, which is 108% coverage. The excess ORO provides crucial buffer, and it also drives later reactor stages.
But let's introduce a point of necessary critical analysis here, the protein gap. The sources note that while the system is highly efficient for air and water, the biomass only produces about 30 grams of protein daily. That covers only 43% of the required 70 grams.
Right.
So why is this gap accepted? Why not just expand the reactor volume or increase the protein yield gene?
That's a critical constraint driven by the laws of physics and engineering volume. To achieve 100% protein coverage from bios of zero alone, you would have to double the reactor volume to 10 liters per person. That doubles the mass. And, most critically, it doubles the required light area and power consumption. The design team calculated that the efficiency of photosynthetic protein production just plateaus rapidly past that 40% mark.
Well,
So they consciously accepted this gap because carrying a 34-year supply of highly concentrated supplementary proteins or using the next reactor, BIOS 1, to synthesize the rest, was actually a lighter and more energy-efficient solution than demanding 100% coverage from BIOS 0. It's a key compromise, and it's all driven by minimizing launch mass.
Right, makes sense. Let's follow the actual recycling process in detail because the closed loop function is the key to the ship's endurance. When crew generates solid waste, the feces aren't simply filtered, they have to be chemically processed before re-entering the biological cycle.
The raw waste has to be broken down first. It's a high-energy process called hydrolysis. This process converts complex organic molecules into simpler, readily digestible carbon sources, specifically acetate.
Acetate.
Acetate is the crucial intermediate chemical. Raw fecal matter is just too complex for the cyanobacteria to process efficiently and rapidly, but acetate is a perfect high-yield food source for them.
So the system operates a dedicated hydrolysis stage just to create that acetate, which is then fed directly back into the cyanobacteria culture, becoming the building block for new cells and oxygen. It's an incredibly rapid, cyclical consumption of waste.
Exactly. And even the dead cells from the culture are recycled. When they reach the end of their lifespan, they undergo something called autolysis, the self-digestion of the cell, which releases amino acids and nutrients. These are immediately captured and used for the overall protein mixture, ensuring that the bioreactor mass itself remains stable over time.
We mentioned the nanocellulose fibrils. The system uses a filtration mechanism to separate these fibers from the clean water output. What happens to them next?
They're routed to the onboard 3D printer. These Kevlar-like fibers are mixed with a binder, often a carbohydrate output from another reactor, to create strong, durable structural components on demand. This ability to continuously grow new ship parts from biowaste is the physical manifestation of the living starship concept.
And the final beautiful detail in this section is how the system improves its own efficiency. We noted the light input. They use reflector foil to redirect any LED light that passes through the culture medium back into the reactor, increasing the photosynthetic efficiency by an additional plus 15%.
That's right.
BioZero is a system that optimizes itself using its own waste products. It's just brilliant.
So having secured life support with BioZero, we now transition to BIOS 1. This is where biology stops sustaining life and starts driving the vessel across the gulf of space.
The living engine.
The living engine. The residual outputs of the life support system waste heat, leftover corros, and mineral byproducts. They become the primary inputs for this second specialized bioreactor designed for high energy density fuel and electricity production.
Right. And its goal is purely energy and propulsion. This zero waste reactor factory produces methane, CH, hydrogen, H, and electricity. It's the ultimate utilization of waste streams.
And the organism they use here is a highly specific genetically modified species called methanogenic archaea 2.0. Archaea are these ancient organisms often found in extreme environments, so perfectly suited for high efficiency chemical production.
So let's break down the CRISPR edits here. They must be even more focused on brute output than BioZero. What modification achieves the massive methane increase required for the main drive?
They increased the expression of the MCR-ABG promoter cluster. This cluster controls the methyl coenzyme reductase enzyme, which is the final and the rate-limiting step in methane production.
Okay.
By turning up the volume control on this specific enzyme, to use our previous analogy, they achieved a monumental plus 400% CHO output.
400%.
This is the breakthrough that allows them to generate fuel constantly and on demand throughout the 34-year journey. It completely eliminates the need to store 34 years worth of propellant at launch.
And propulsion requires two different fuel types, right? Methane for the main ion drive and hydrogen for the maneuvering rockets.
Precisely. They introduced the high-day cluster to ensure that, in parallel with methane production, the archaea could efficiently extract H-hydrogen. Hydrogen is vital for the high impulse adjustments and trajectory corrections required during that long cruise phase. And separating the production allows for independent flow control to the engine systems.
And for the ship's electrical power, they modified the archaea with the MFC cytochrome. Let's clarify this specific piece of jargon. What is the microbiological fuel cell, or MFC, and what does the cytochrome modification do?
So the MFC system uses live microbes to generate electricity by transferring electrons produced during their metabolic process to an external anode. The cytochrome is essentially the biological wire. They engineered a specific electron transfer protein, the cytochrome, into the archaea's membrane, enabling direct electron transfer. This modification allows the reactor itself to function as a battery, producing 0.8 volts per cell and plugging the biological system directly into the ship's power grid.
So it's truly a microbiological fuel cell, using the waste process to generate power. And the system even recycles the heat from BioZero.
The thermal capsule modification allows the archaea to operate stably up to 70 degrees C. By routing waste heat from the other reactors into the BIOS 1 chamber, they boost the rate of methane production while simultaneously using that thermal energy, closing yet another loop in the energy chain.
It's incredible. Looking at the performance metrics for the full cruise BIOS 1, the 3-liter reactor, volume 2L for methanogens, 1L for the MFC film, produces 800 grams of CH per day.
Right.
That covers the 500 grams needed by the main engine by 160%. It also produces 300 grams of H euros per day, which is 150% coverage, and the electricity output is 1,200 watt-hours daily, covering the 500-watt ship need by a massive 240%.
And we have to note the essential byproducts which feed back into the human element. Crucial vitamins like BROs and various amino acids necessary to supplement the crew's diet.
That helps close that protein gap we talked about.
It helps close that 43% protein gap exactly. Plus, mineral fertilizer, potassium, phosphorus, magnesium is sent right back to BioZero. This interconnected supply chain is the reason the whole mission is feasible.
Now we move to how this biological fuel is actually used across 5.9 light years. As you mentioned, relying solely on the methane ion drive, even with its impressive specific impulse of 370 seconds, which basically describes the engine's efficiency, the journey would take 56.4 years.
Way too long.
Too long for a single generation mission.
So the engineering solution was the Barnard Express hybrid upgrade, a 4-phase continuous propulsion system designed to exploit the continuous biogeneration of material. This complexity was required to slash the time down to 34 years.
Phase 1 is the dependable workhorse, the methane ion drive. This provides the primary V, or change in velocity, of 26,000 kilometers. The engine thrust is small, a modest 2.0 newtons, but it runs constantly, fueled by the Archaea.
Let's explain A simply. It's the total capacity the ship has to accelerate, maneuver, and slow down. To reach interstellar speeds in 34 years, you need an enormous amount of AV.
Right.
The brilliance of this design is that the required mass of propellant, the methane, is not carried from Earth, but is grown in transit.
And phase 2 is where the propulsion gets truly exotic. The laser plasma impulse system. This is used for secondary acceleration and maneuvering. This system uses tiny 10 milligram autopill tablets. These are not metal. They're also bio-grown from the BIOS reactors.
These tablets are flash heated by powerful onboard lasers, creating a plasma plume that generates thrust, and they are fired at an incredible frequency, 100 hertz or 100 shots per second.
Wow. The impulse system generates a substantial 20 newtons of thrust. What's the strategic advantage of high-frequency, low-mass shots compared to one large, powerful burn?
It allows for continuous, highly precise thrust without subjecting the crew to high G-forces. It's just a constant stream of tiny pushes.
It's a gentle push.
Over 34 years, the total propellant mass needed for this phase is 10,000 kilograms. That's 10 tons of biotablets, all grown from waste streams. This system adds significant VE of 1,374 kilometers, contributing heavily to the time reduction.
Okay, I have to inject a point of critical skepticism here looking at the engineering risks. Phase 3, which is utilized near the target system, is the EM tether. It's a 10-kilometer cable deployed to brake or accelerate near Barnard's magnetic field. And this cable is made entirely of those carbon fiber fibers grown from the R0 reactor.
That is a massive operational risk, and the source material acknowledges it. You are relying on a structural component, 10 kilometers long, grown over 30 years from recycled human waste. The risk of micrometeoroid damage or structural degradation is high.
So why use it? Why risk the whole deceleration on a biocable?
Because it's a propellant-free, high-efficiency brake. Once the ship enters Barnard's system, the magnetic field is estimated at 10 microtesla. By running 100 amps of current, generated by the onboard MFC bioreactor, through that 10-kilometer conductor, it creates a constant Lorentz force of 10 newtons.
Wow.
This force is powerful enough to provide an added V of 1.6 kilometers over 1 year, essential for precision orbital insertion or braking near Omega Tucci. The risk is accepted because the mass savings in the required V are only achievable without carrying extra chemical braking propellant.
And the final piece, phase 4, is the photon sail, a massive 1,000 square meter thin film, also constructed from the R0 fibrils designed to reflect Barnard's light.
This is pure continuous thrust, requiring zero energy input other than starlight. It generates a minuscule 0.3 millinewtons of constant thrust. Over a multi-decade journey, however, that adds up to an important V of 0.05 kilometers per year. It's the ultimate expression of the closed-loop continuous push philosophy.
So when we add it all up, the methane ion, the laser plasma impulse, the EM tether, and the photon sail, the total hybrid V is 27,375.65 kilometers, which confirms the final 34-year flight time.
That's right.
It's not a mission of powerful bursts. It's a symphony of continuous low-level efficiency driven by engineered life. So we've proven the technical feasibility using synthetic biology. Now let's talk about the crew. We have 8 people confined within this closed ecosystem for 34 years. The human factor becomes the dominant design challenge.
It always does.
Let's start with the habitat scale. We talk about multiple bioreactors, and the final design uses 6 specialized units, R0 to R5, for the 8-person crew.
And the physical constraint of deep space travel forces hyperminiaturization. The total fluid volume for all 6 reactors, that's R0 for oxygen, R1 for methane, R2 for hydrogen, R3 for protein food, R4 for water recycling, and R5 for the kitchen. The total volume is a staggering 14 liters.
14 liters.
That's it. That is less than half the size of a standard kitchen trash bin, serving 8 people for over 3 decades.
That's unbelievable. And the total power consumption for the lights required for these 6 reactors is only 70 watts, spread over 1.4 square meters. The efficiency is just a testament to the CRISPR modifications. But let's turn to R5, the Robo Kitchen, or Robo Chef 3D. Since the majority of nutritional input comes from that synthesized 40% protein paste from R3, the challenge isn't nutrition, it's psychological monotony.
Indeed. The diet is precisely engineered for 2,200 kilcal day, fortified with essential micronutrients like BOA, AU, D, iron, and magnesium, which are either synthesized by the microbes or stored in small, high-density packets.
Okay.
The 3D printing system uses the protein paste mixed with those bio-grown structural fibers to simulate texture and mouthfeel.
The 7-day rotating menu is designed not just for calories, but to trick the brain into experiencing culinary diversity. I find the specific examples in the source fascinating because they reveal the austerity of this life.
Take the mushroom steak. It's 3D printed protein paste, supplemented with the nanocellulose fibers, the Kevlar-like material.
All right.
The fibers are used to provide the necessary tensile strength and chewiness, mimicking the texture of muscle tissue. Similarly, pasta carbonara is created from protein, mixed with ethanol, a byproduct of carbohydrate processing in the waste stream, and nano water.
Nano water sounds extremely nice. I assume that's water purified to a hyper-specific standard, maybe lacking specific dissolved solids to ensure purity.
Exactly. It's the highest level of multi-stage condensed and filtered water, essential for both the bioreactors and human consumption. And then you have the purely utilitarian options like the 3D burger or, most bizarrely, the hydrogen tea.
Hydrogen tea. I have to laugh. The drink is H-Eros mixed with water and lemon aroma. So the crew is literally drinking the excess fuel gas, just slightly flavored as a 0-calorie, 0-protein beverage.
I hope it packed enough lemon aroma for 34 years.
Me too.
It speaks to the comprehensive utilization policy, though. Every molecule must serve a function. But to truly counteract the sensory deprivation of paste tea, they established the seed bank orange. This is the non-essential system that becomes psychically essential.
A dedicated 1 square meter, 0.5 cubic meter volume greenhouse, not for calories, but purely for psychological comfort for the earth flavors. This is the anti-monotony machine.
It houses 30 different cultures, providing sensory richness. This tiny garden gives them the smell of fresh earth, the sight of green leaves, and the taste of non-synthesized foods. They grow coffee, arabica, tea, onion, garlic, spices like mint, ginger, cinnamon, vanilla, cocoa, potatoes.
Potatoes for chips, I see.
The psychological value of preparing a small meal with actual garlic rather than printed aroma is incalculable.
And the crowning achievement of the seed bank is the inclusion of the ingredients for fermentation: wheat, barley, and hops. The sources confirm that this allows the crew to produce 0.5 liters of 4% beer per day for the entire group.
That is a strategic allocation of resources. It is a profound engineering choice to prioritize morale. They're using energy and volume to grow luxury carbohydrates that could otherwise be dedicated to pure protein production.
Right.
The rationale is clear. Without psychological resilience, the mission fails regardless of the why. This production feeds into the Earth banquets. Periodic feasts occurring every 30 days, like Earth Day beer plus chips plus cookies, or Coffee Day espresso plus chocolate, designed to anchor them to terrestrial traditions.
Shifting to the physical environment, even with the continuous low-thrust acceleration of the hybrid drive, it's not enough to maintain human musculature long-term. Artificial gravity is necessary, and the ship utilizes a rotating cylindrical hull to generate a full 1 G.
This is a massive engineering constraint driven purely by human physiology. To generate 1G, the habitable cylinder must have a radius of 30 meters, requiring a rotation of 3.2 revolutions per minute, RPM.
What's the engineering trade-off here? Could they have made the ship smaller?
They absolutely could have. A
Right.
smaller radius ship would require a much faster RPM, but anything above 4 or 5 RPM begins to induce severe vestibular discomfort or space sickness. The 30-meter radius, which translates to a comfortable 19-second rotation period, dictates the minimum size and therefore the minimum launch mass of the entire vessel structure. They sacrificed mass efficiency for human comfort and operational stability.
And the architecture within the cylinder is designed around the 3 rings of harmony, specifically segregating space to manage social dynamics over 3 decades.
Ring A, the general space, 200 meters sold, is dedicated to communal activities. The kitchen, cinema, a dance floor. The philosophy here is we awesome, forcing necessary social interaction and cooperation.
Ring B provides the necessary retreat. Personal space, about 15 meters per person, so 120 meters off total. This has bedrooms and private hobby areas. This enforces I personality, ensuring individual identity doesn't just dissolve into the group dynamic.
And Ring C, the third space, 50 meters strolled, acts as the transition zone, quiet rooms, VR access, creative space. This supports I New Self. It's where the crew processes the transition from Earth life to being interstellar travelers. The architecture itself is a psychological tool.
And to help the crew physically and mentally adjust to this rotational environment, they even institute a ritual called the first turn, where everyone lies on the rim, breathing in sync, to align their bodies and minds with a new rotational rhythm.
So the 34-year journey requires an unprecedented crew management strategy. On Earth, we organize tasks by efficiency. In the Barnard BIOS project, the philosophy is radical. Harmony, not efficiency. They abandoned fixed technical specialties for what they call living roles.
I have to challenge that as a host. On a high-stakes interstellar mission where every metric is precise, isn't prioritizing harmony over efficiency dangerously impractical? I mean, shouldn't the propulsion expert be the propulsion expert for all 34 years?
That is the essential conflict the designer faced. If a single individual is responsible for the complex propulsion system for 34 years, they face catastrophic burnout, potential boredom, and you have a single point of failure.
Okay, that's a good point.
The solution is holistic mastery. The roles are defined by biofunctions and psychological tasks, ensuring everyone understands the entire ecosystem.
Let's detail these 8 specific roles, as they are central to the crew's identity and rotation.
Okay, first, the breeder, Dakatel, manages biosogos, functional task, life support maintenance, psychological function, life, responsible for the air that sustains them.
Right.
Second, the taster, Kusatel, manages the 3D kitchen, creating new taste, psychological function, pleasure, maintaining sensory engagement. Third, the engine, Divital, manages propulsion, but also the rhythm of the ship and group dance, psychological function, movement.
Movement.
Fourth, the lighter, Citadel, manages the lasers and the light rituals of the reactors, psychological function, light. Fifth, the gardener, Sadovnik, manages the seed bank orange, psychological function, growth.
The steward of the future.
Exactly. Sixth, the sounder, Zufkatel, manages music and the group chorus, psychological function, harmony. Seventh, the historian, records all VR session logs, psychological function, memory. And finally, number 8, the neutral, manages meditation and quietude, psychological function, silence.
And the rotation is the key to psychological durability. Every crew member cycles through all 8 roles over the 32 operational years of the journey. So they spend 4 years dedicated to being the breather, 4 years as the taster, and so on.
And this rotation achieves 2 things. First, complete technical mastery of the vessel by every single person. Second, and more importantly, it prevents stagnation and ensures psychological re-engagement every 4 years. You might get tired of being the engineer, but you never get tired of the mission because you constantly shift identity and responsibility.
Beyond the roles, the sources detail strict harmony protocols to manage long-term isolation stress. The neural balance system is fascinating, utilizing EEG brain mapping, VR immersion, and biofeedback to keep stress hormones in check.
And the mandatory daily routine speaks volumes about the priority of mental health. 15 minutes of synchronized breathing, timed to 6 breaths per minute. This routine is often accompanied by mint scent from the seed bank and the color green, designed to consciously regulate vital rhythms and reduce cortisol levels.
And the greatest markers of their endurance are the 7 interstellar rituals, tied to the Barnard BIOS calendar, which organize time across 3 decades, replacing Earth's arbitrary yearly cycles.
These rituals mark profound spatial and philosophical shifts, and each one is celebrated with an orange feast delicacy grown on board. Let's focus on the deep markers of the journey.
Okay, so year 14, Sun Star. This marks the point where our sun recedes enough that it becomes visually indistinguishable from any other star. Just another point in the sky. Earth is psychologically gone.
The ritual is poignant. They direct an onboard LED laser pulse back towards the sun, a final gesture of connection and farewell to their home light. The accompanying feast is the sun cocktail, made from orange and honey, a burst of earth flavor and vitamin C, designed to mitigate the psychological impact of losing their stellar anchor.
Then year 28, halfway. This is the critical moment when the ship performs the 180-degree flip, the halfway turn, to initiate the long two-stage deceleration phase towards Barnard.
And the physical act of turning the vessel is mirrored by the ritual. All 8 crew members form a living ring around the central command column, symbolizing unity during this radical change in direction and purpose. The feast is the halfway pie, the most complex dish utilizing wheat, tomato, onion, and garlic grown in the seed bank.
A real meal.
A real home-style meal marking the successful completion of the acceleration phase.
And finally, a crucial pre-arrival ritual adjusted for the 34-year profile. Year 42, which is now placed much closer to the destination. Barnard is born. This is when Barnard's star disk becomes visible in the telescope, transitioning from a point of light to an actual destination.
And the ritual symbolizes the transfer of life. Each crew member plants one seed of Earth origin in a communal pot, signifying that they are not just traveling, but carrying the genetic code of their home to the new star. The feast is Christmas coffee, espresso plus honey plus almond milk, connecting the arrival of a new world with a terrestrial celebration.
All this complex structure is designed to anchor the crew internally, but they also need a connection to the world they left. This is where the hyper-realistic virtual reality system comes in, the ultimate psychological anchor against loneliness and homesickness.
And this is state-of-the-art tech, far beyond simple simulation. It uses real-world data like OpenStreetMap, generates realistic interactive individuals via Jan avatars, uses voice clone technology for familiar voices, and integrates with biofeedback to personalize the experience based on stress levels. The key AI running the social environment is designated GPT-2040.
GPT-2040. That implies an unprecedented level of AI sophistication, capable of generating hyper-realistic human interactions and complex societal scenarios on demand.
Precisely. It allows for the complexity of human interaction that simple programmed bots just can't achieve, but the sensory detail is what pushes the realism to 70%. The system uses bioaroma scents like city air, coffee, and rain recreated from chemical compounds synthesized on board, often using the seed bank products. It's designed to trick the limbic system into believing the environment is real.
And the pinnacle of the system is the free will VR. This isn't passive viewing. The crew gets 30 minutes of complete freedom daily to interact with AI-generated crowds that react realistically and intelligently.
They need this freedom to maintain socio-emotional competence. If the crew only talked to the same 7 people for 34 years, their ability to integrate into the new environment or even interact with Earth if they ever returned would be compromised.
Right.
The sources catalog specific scenarios available, talking to a girl walking a dog in a park, singing karaoke in a Tokyo bar, or reading in a Parisian library. These are mundane yet vital interactions that maintain the memory of complex society.
And the final metrics for this VR system are perhaps the most vital of the entire mission plan. The 30 minutes of free will VR daily is projected to reduce loneliness by 40% and homesickness by an even higher 65%. This proves that the mission designers recognized that maintaining memory and human experience was technically necessary for survival.
Absolutely essential.
So after 34 years of relentless biological and psychological management, the ship is now approaching Barnard's star. The target, Megatucci, or Barnard 2, is not an Earth analog. It presents a challenge that demands the bioengineered expertise of the crew.
The data, derived from 2026 pre-launch observations, shows a large super-Earth about 1.6 Earth radius. Its atmospheric composition is dense, 80% nitrogen, 15% fatty aeros, and 5% methane. And this entire gaseous layer is shrouded beneath a permanent, opaque, 10-kilometer thick cloud deck.
That means no visible light reaches the surface. Yet the temperature data is startlingly temperate, 288 Kelvin surface temperature, which is about 15 degrees C or 59 degrees Fahrenheit.
That temperate reading is entirely due to an immense greenhouse effect driven by the high concentration of co-GROs and methane. The planet emits infrared light, so it's essentially glowing warm, but it is perpetually dark on the surface.
Further data shows a radar flat surface, relief of only 10 meters, suggesting either a global subsurface ocean or a smooth layer of solid ice or hydrocarbon tar. The strong magnetic field, 0.3 gals, 3 times Earth's, is crucial for protecting any surface life from the stellar wind of Barnard's star.
But the most profound discovery, the one that necessitated the immediate bioengineering preparedness of the mission, was the detection of microRNA particles, 0.1 micrometer aerosols within the cloud deck. And these particles are non-DNA based.
So this is confirmation of an entirely alien biochemistry. They are targeting a world that already hosts life, but life that does not follow the classic DNA rules we know.
Exactly. And this requires a landing strategy designed for maximum safety and dual functionality. The 8-person crew splits into 2 autonomous 4-person shuttles operating under the principle, 2 wings, 1 breath.
Shuttle 1 is the breeder. Its mission is to stay aloft, focusing on using the onboard BIOS, OS, and CH converters to establish an oxygen base within the thick clouds. Its purpose is to investigate clouds and create a high-altitude, oxygenated observation platform.
And Shuttle 2 is the gardener. This shuttle is designed for direct surface landing on the carbon silicate plane. Its mandate is to create seed base, immediately deploying Earth-based cyanobacteria and seeds, initiating the biological colonization of the dark surface. This split ensures redundancy and covers both the atmospheric and terrestrial environments simultaneously.
The sources provide a detailed, short timeline, what they call the second genesis. Landing is day 0, characterized by the thick, metal-tasting cloud environment, a result of various atmospheric metals and compounds.
But the biological systems, honed over 34 years, kick in immediately. By day 7, O levels in the pressurized surface habitat rise to 20%, achieving Earth normal breathability. Simultaneously, the Earth seeds, planted immediately upon landing, germinate, standing 1 centimeter tall. The biological clock is ticking rapidly.
The transition happens swiftly. By day 30, O levels exceed 25% within the base, achieving full breathability without masks inside the pressurized areas. This is the moment they celebrate the first color, when the first flowers, white, yellow, and green, appear, contrasting starkly with the black carbon surface.
This is the first validation of the entire mission profile. The engineered life survives and thrives, initiating photosynthesis and radically altering the local microenvironment. And by day 56, just under 2 months after landing, the first engineered forest reaches 1 meter in height. And this is a testament to the psychological management. The crew achieves 100% psychological harmony. They have successfully adapted to the new environment.
The ultimate success is the transformation of the ship itself. It was the home and the factory for 34 years, but its final function is to become the building materials for the new colony.
And the captain's final log entry 10,011, is less of a technical summary and more of a philosophical statement on your ultimate legacy. It summarizes the journey from machine to world. We were an impulse, we became a world. We were a seed, we became a garden. We were the first, we became eternal.
The first permanent structure, the first house, is constructed from the R0 fibrils, the nanocellulose fibers grown from recycled waste. The ship, engineered to be an organism, completes its life cycle by dissolving and becoming the foundation of the new world.
If we connect this detailed blueprint to the bigger picture, the core genius of the Barnard BIOS project is not just finding a new way to fly, but a complete dissolution of the line between machine and organism. The crew is the raw biological input. Their waste is the fuel and the building material, and the ship is the self-regenerating ecosystem that sustains them. This entire mission is an act of complex biological poetry engineered for interstellar scale, proving that life, not metal, is the most efficient system for endurance.
This deep dive has shown us a mission designed for biological, physical, and psychological permanence, resulting in a 34-year voyage achieved through radical hybridization, the ion drive, the laser plasma impulse, the EM tether, and the photon sail, all powered by hyper-efficient engineered life. So what does this all mean for us? We've dissected the most intricate details of this starship. The 14 liters of life support fluid, the 3.2 RPM necessary to sustain 1G, and the 400% boost to methane production. But the mission success, that 100% psychological harmony achieved on day 56, was ultimately tied to a non-technical spec. It was the 30 minutes of free will virtual reality the crew experienced every single day, keeping the memory of home and complex society alive. When a civilization is planning a journey for eternity, is the maintenance of human memory and psychological freedom ultimately more important and more fragile than any engineered component? Something to think about as we look to the stars.
Welcome to the deep dive. Today, we are taking a single deep breath and stepping aboard a vessel that really challenges